My point is that it's the talent we all have. And some of us are privileged because that talent is stimulated based on our family. But that doesn't mean that others cannot stimulate their talent independently. I'm of the belief that entrepreneurs do not actually are not risk takers. They're risk navigators.
Yeah.
Fools are risk takers. That they go to Las Vegas and throw the dice. It's good entrepreneurs are those who understand, just kind of like a pilot. A pilot has a checklist. As if they didn't want to take any risk, there no planes would ever take off. And the expectation sometimes of entrepreneurs is this immediate satisfaction. I want to get rich quick. Where is my money? Where is my and that just in real life doesn't work now.
And that's next on Bootstrapping Your Dreams show. So, the big question is this: how are ambitious people like us, who don't have a lot of resources, did not go to Ivy League colleges, were not born into wealth, how do we become resourceful enough, use our creativity, our dedication, and a little bit of crazy to bootstrap our way to realizing our dreams? Whether it is launching a new company, launching a new app, or making it to the top of the corporate ladder? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Hey listeners and viewers, we have created a tremendous community of bootstrappers, entrepreneurs, and professionals who are ambitious, resourceful, and want to get things done. We brainstorm, support, and help each other out. Come join us. Navigate to bootstrapping.group. That is bootstrapping.group. If you like this video, do not forget to hit that like button now. Or if you want us to improve our content, go ahead and hit the thumbs down button and give us your feedback in the comment section below. Here at Tetranoodle, we are passionate about entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation. Every week, we bring you insightful and engaging interviews, tips, tricks, and strategies to help you grow your business or rise in your corporate profession. So if you're new here, please consider subscribing. And do not forget to hit that bell icon so that you are notified when we publish new content. Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams show. I'm your host Manuj Aggarwal, and today we'll be talking with Sid Mohasseb. So Sid, at 16, migrated to the US with his family, and at 21, he started and exited his first company while he was still at college. At 25, he taught comparative Eastern and Western philosophy. At 27, he became the youngest partner of a national management consulting firm, serving Fortune 500 clients with operational improvements and strategy formulations. During the next 2 decades, he supported large-scale acquisition, acted as a principal investor in middle-market companies, leading company turnarounds from near bankruptcy to profitability. He also founded and led several early-stage and hyper-growth companies from inception to acquisition. Many times over, he has shouldered the responsibility for meeting payroll and has written checks to acquire or invest in companies, learning to think both like an investor and a founder, and facing, accepting, and overcoming his share of failures and successes in ideas and ventures. Sid has served on boards of over a dozen profit and non-profit companies. He's a university professor at different universities, a fund manager, and an angel investor. Oh my God, you have accomplished so much. I am so excited to talk to you and learn from you today.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and I felt kind of old when you were reading all that. And it's been a journey.
Awesome. Yeah, I focused on your the younger days, so I'm curious to know what the latter part of your journey was like. So if you can share that with us, that will be amazing start.
In terms of the latter part or the early part?
Let's go from wherever you want to pick it up from. Let's take the most interesting part of your life and share that with us.
I'm hoping that the most interesting part is yet to come.
Awesome.
But I'll tell you a little bit about the background, and we can drill down any way you like. I think based on your audience, maybe most interested the last decade or two. But basically, I started very young, and I came from Iran as an immigrant to the United States by myself, and went to college and started my first company. I always had this entrepreneurial dream, essentially, and quickly did one company. Started to work with a management consulting firm where I was fortunate enough to meet a guy who was a wonderful mentor for me. And I became his partner about a few years, 6 or 7 years afterwards, 5 years afterwards. He was a very young guy. Those days he took me at, I don't know, 23, 24 years old. He would take me to board meetings with presidents of Union Bank or McDonnell Douglas and things of that sort. So it was a phenomenal experience. In the mid to late 80s, there was this rush of leverage buyouts in the United States that a lot of people were making a lot of money off of it. And I was on the consultant side that, folks from the Wall Street would come to us and say, hey, we want to acquire this, but we don't know how to run a company. So I was asked to kind of structure the organization, structure the operations, see what we can, how we can optimize and improve so that they can get their cash back. After a couple of years of doing that with others, I said, wait a minute, the money is on the other side. It's not me consulting and getting an hourly rate. So I started my own firm doing that and had good fortune in buying a few companies from DuPont and other sorts in terms of spin-outs. And mostly they had some troubles that needs to be fixing. And that was basically the 90s. And along the way, I started a number of companies, some of them purely by coincidence that, it was some opportunity. I thought, hey, this is an opportunity to start. And it became a real company, and we spit it off and then later on sold it. But my last company, which I did in that period, didn't do well. It was a big failure in the .com area. And it was a great idea whose time hadn't come, and then there was the .com stuff which kind of blew it up. But I was fortunate enough again that I realized it early, and I wrote checks back to some investors. I was the major investor, and we had some VCs and otherwise. And at the time when I was writing the checks, I said, "We've never seen anything like that. You're crazy. You should." And then after the crash happened, like 2 months later, they said, "How did you see this?" And I said, "Well, I guess I got lucky. I don't know if you could call a loss a lock." But anyways, after about 2005 or so, when I started another company after that, and we had a great run, the strategy really worked. We 30 times increased the revenue within a 2.5-year time frame, opened up offices around the globe. I became essentially an angel investor, and I was the president of Tech Coast Angels and lived in Orange County and started a venture capital firm, small seed fund, and did that for that period. After 2009, which was another downturn of the market, I jumped in as the CEO of one of my portfolio companies and sold that to KPMG. Stayed there as the head of their innovation leadership group and innovation leadership for the strategy group, and the head of part of the global group for the heading the data analytics initiative that they had at that time. And then I pretty much have been writing. I wrote a book called The Caterpillar's Edge. I'm about to write another book which is around entrepreneurship, actually, which your audience may be interested in, and what I call the choices and consequences that we make. And basically teaching at USC now as a professor, both in the engineering and business school, and making some investments and advising some companies, and doing a lot of speaking engagements. And having a lot of fun on all of that. It's kind of a circle that keeps me creative. At the same time, I'm able to give back. So it's a great journey.
That's an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, one question that comes to mind is you grew up in Iran, and I grew up in India. Growing up in a country like that, as compared to Western culture, you pick up a few habits of few things, kind of mindset. Did you have any advantage or disadvantage while you were growing up in Iran, and how did it translate to the environment here in US?
Well, I think I was 16 when I left, so I'm not sure how much my mind was shaped up from that perspective. My father he worked for a bank, and then he came out, and he was doing some consulting work himself. But he did have an entrepreneurial spirit, if you would. It is always. Actually, I talk about this in my new book, that I believe that everybody is an entrepreneur. Even, you can have your 6-year-old kid and the way they negotiate for an ice cream. Yeah. Or, if you look at all the definitions of entrepreneurship, it's about creativity, use of funds appropriately, and, a bunch of other stuff, which probably your mother and mine did as well. They used money efficiently, they applied it, they created value for their children and so forth. So my point is that it's the talent we all have. And some of us are privileged because that talent is stimulated based on our family. But that doesn't mean that others cannot stimulate their talent independently. Call it a curse or a privilege that talent, in my case, was stimulated when I was in Iran and before I came here.
Yeah, that's a great point. Anybody can actually reach out into their own sort of psyche and become an entrepreneur. But I think a lot of these boundaries that we set up are generally forced upon us. Entrepreneurship is looked upon as more risky than a job, which I don't really agree. Yeah.
Correct. So I'm of the belief that entrepreneurs do not actually are not risk takers. Mm-hmm. They're risk navigators. Yeah. Fools are risk takers. They go to Las Vegas and throw the dice. Good entrepreneurs are those who understand, just kind of like a pilot. A pilot has a checklist. As if they didn't want to take any risk, no planes would ever take off. Yeah. They have a way of navigating risk, and then you have commercial pilots that do things all the time. And they're kind of like corporate folks. They have a regimen, there is a boundary, there is a checklist that you manage risk with. And then you have the entrepreneurs. They still have all the challenges of a regular pilot, all the risks that has to be managed, but they're also have a cause. It's like a jet fighter pilots that go out and they're trying to accomplish something more than themselves. They have a mission, they have a cause. But they're also being shot at all the time. They don't have the luxury of corporate that their cash flow is managed and their finances are provided by somebody else, and they have a risk management department that they can blame if things go wrong. They are on the front line, essentially.
Yeah, that's true. Now, you use a metaphor of a tsunami to characterize some of the innovations that are happening today, like the social media networks, the internet. And so, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Tsunamis, when I used that originally in the context on a TED Talk that I was doing, was around the social media and how it has actually changed the direction of decisions, if you would. In the past, decision makers, leaders, corporates, if you would, the thought leaders, whatever you want to call it, would think about something, and then that thing would be tested in the market and forced upon people to accept or deny, which mostly they had no choice but to accept. But now with this change, the power has shifted to the people. And it's actually people who are deciding based on their tweets or based on their Facebook interactions, based on the way they operate. And this is even more now observable when you look at the millennial generation, who actually are not that loyal to brands. They say, they believe that they can get more and they deserve more, and they believe that they should, and they act on it. So that power has shifted. But there's another thing about tsunamis that it may be appropriate to discuss with your audience, and that is when you're building a company, there are three ways of looking at things. I call them the three waves. There are the waves that are the normal waves. That's we run a business, and every day it needs an energy. Those waves are the energy that drives us to do things, and they're constant. It's the day-to-day shipping of the products or managing the day-to-day, but that needs to be there, and the leaders and the entrepreneurs are driving that energy. But then you have the tropical waves where your company needs to jump in a little way. There are more massive forces. They may come from the market. They may come from where you need to be. It may be a new product introduction or so forth. And then there are tsunamis, which could be destructive if somebody else generates them, like what happens to companies that were operating before iPhone came out. That was a tsunami that came out. But if you can create as an entrepreneur those kind of tsunamis, then you are the one who really have that power, that ability to shape an industry. So there's three layers, if you would, of things that happens, and they are independent and they could be simultaneous. You have to run the business. You have to make sure that things are working, and then you may have those other tropical and tsunami waves on top of it. But you can't just say, well, I'm an entrepreneur, I just want to create tsunamis. Those would be destructive to you.
That's a very good insight. Now, can you share some? Obviously, most people, if asked, they will like to create a tsunami. So, can you tell us from your experience what are some of the nuggets of wisdom you can share on what it takes to create this tsunami?
I have tried many times and I failed many times, but I've succeeded a few. So that's the first thing. They just don't happen. It's not like if I have an idea as a founder, as a scientist, as an entrepreneur, then boom, it's just going to happen. There's a few things. One is timing. For example, the company that I mentioned to you that failed in 2000 timeframe, right now you would say how it's pretty prevalent. It was about aggregating data through internet, which wasn't done in 2000. For some of our data scientist folks, that may sound like, well, how could that be? How could that be? Yeah. But that was the comparative knowledge was the company that we designed to do it, but it was too early. The bandwidths were too slow. The companies weren't ready. The databases weren't there. All these other things that are required just weren't there. So timing is very critical in doing that. There's the notion of what I call relevance, and relevance has to do with, is it relevant for our today? If somebody would have come up with, I don't know, you're probably young enough to know, and some of your audience may not remember, there was something called the Thomas book, right? The Thomas guide, where we, when we wanted to find places, that was the thing. We look at it and we go from page to page. It was pretty painful, but it got us there. Now we have the Google, and first this navigation system came, and then it was this great movement. Then we had Google, that we have our phone. Then we had Waze, and now even if Waze gets me stuck in traffic, I'll throw it out and say, "What is this nonsense? Why am I being stuck?" Well, expectations change. Yeah. And as expectations change, those relevance, being relevant becomes critical. Now, when you're creating a tsunami, those have to be sustainable so that it's not a declining fad. It can sustain the time so that the audience, the customers, can accept that and internalize it and become a part of it. And you see thousands of early stage companies that fail because they have an initial gap and then boom, it dies because it just doesn't have that stick to itness, if you would, for the longer period.
Yeah. So from what I'm hearing, you brought up so many good points. From what I'm hearing, they're all sort of common on, they sort of converge on this keen sense of observation of what is happening around the world in your environment with people, what are they thinking, what state of mind they are in, and what is resonating with them. Yeah.
The other thing that I think is important is the notion of staying real. That is, I'm not against having big, audacious goals. There's nothing wrong with it. But a lot of times the distance between here and there is quite long way. And I use the analogy of the caterpillar in my first book in terms of always evolving. A caterpillar doesn't sleep one night and then get up the next morning as a butterfly. There's a process, and the process is gooey, it's messy, there's a lot of stuff that happens, there's a lot of danger, a lot of people can step on you, and in business you got competition, you got innovation, you got a lot of stuff, you got people who quit, IP that is compromised, there's a lot of stuff that happens. So it's not just, okay, I see what is relevant around me and then I'm there. It doesn't happen that way. You look at LinkedIn and you think, oh, look at this. It took 12, 15 years before they became somebody. It wasn't overnight. If you look at all the great companies, that didn't happen overnight. And the expectation sometimes of entrepreneurs is this immediate satisfaction. I want to get rich quick. Where is my money? Where is my, and that just in real life doesn't work. Now, there are examples that has happened, but it's extremely lucky. It's not the norm. And I don't think we should compare ourselves with norm. We should compare ourselves with what is realistic. And that's when I say, we got to stay real. We got to stay with what is achievable. There is a tomorrow. There would be a goal, but we got to work at it. Hard work still pays.
Yeah. Now, two other technologies that are coming up, which in my mind, I consider them as tsunamis, are machine learning, AI, and blockchain. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I actually came back from China teaching a course around AI. And China and the investment. So venture capital, China, and AI. So I'm a big believer in what it can do. I'm a big believer in the capacity and capability of the technologies that may be there. Let's leave blockchain for a minute aside. I'll come back to that. But AI today, the capacity of artificial intelligence is essentially it's less than a mouse. We're not there. So there's a long way to go. And I hear a lot of people kind of say, oh, the whole world is going to, there's machine mastery. And, what do you think? So someday, 20 years from now, you and I are going to report to our job and say, hello, master, because, the intelligent machine is more intelligent than me. He knows all access to all databases. And so he is the boss. I'm the worker. And guess what? Does he get paid more than I do? Does he get more vacation? All of that. Things that goes with it. But I am a believer in human nature and our capacity to evolve. I think we have physically evolved, and AI is providing us mostly in an augmented fashion to to expand our ability to process the mundane task of computing alternatives, and it would allow us to be more creative. Now, it is a choice by us would want to do that, go through that evolution. And along the way, there's going to be jobs lost and changes and all that. And, we've done that for many, many tens of thousands of years, and I'm a believer that it would. Now, so that's more about AI. And machine learning is basically learning, to feed the machine of how that works, right? Now, one problem is this idea of machine learning, which learns from the past. Now, we've got deep learning and other things, but we have to be careful of not duplicating our past. And I think, because machines learn from the patterns of the previous. So this is where creativity comes in. And if there's one place that I say, hey, be careful, is not to if you would delegate our creativity to the machines. That's where issues become prevalent. On blockchain, it's been around for a long time. I haven't really seen any true, significant value out of it. I think it's just like any other thing in terms of controlling the distribution of information and money. when we didn't have credit cards, then when credit cards came, we can now control what your purchase says, and so I think it's not an innovation; it's an extension of the past, which makes it different than AI.
Yeah. That's those are very good points, and I completely agree with them for sure. As you said it, we are adaptable species, so whatever comes our way, we generally always try to figure out and adapt to it, and that's why we are the most dominant species here on this planet.
Yeah, but I just want to remind us all, including myself, that it is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
The choice is for us to say, okay, I want to be part of this evolutionary process, as opposed to staying on the sidelines and saying, these machines are going to take over, and pushing back and all that. I see that in corporate life in a lot of places all the time, that this idea of sameness, the idea of the addictions that we have to the past, and it is a comfortable thing that we've been doing. What is this nonsense? And so it's pulled back in terms of what can be accomplished, which is, I think, it's to our disadvantage as a human race.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you always have two sides of the equation, right?
Exactly.
There's a lot of innovation already happening, but there are a lot of people who are not, very open to change. So slowly, as it chips away, people do see the value, and hopefully, eventually everything sort of will come together.
Yeah.
All right. That's those are great points. Now, you talked about social media and how it is giving back the power to the consumers and people. But what about surveillance and all these companies sort of invading our privacy? So is that sort of going in the opposite direction here?
Well, there is a big argument, and I may, some of your audience may not like what I'm about to say. I said, yes, I get it that if governments control our privacy and eventually we can become the victim of their, I get that, that there would be a tyranny and all that sort of stuff. But, if my accounts are clear, why am I afraid of somebody looking at it? Now, my point is that, okay, if you want to look at it, you got to pay me. If it's my data, it's not the privacy that bugs me. It's that, big companies use my data to make money, and then I'm not the recipient. It's like any other asset. You want to come use use a room in my house? Okay, you're welcome. You got to pay the rent.
Yeah.
So there's one point there. The other is, this is the danger that I think a lot of folks are ignoring. And this is, I told you I was in China recently, and I just got back 3 days ago. Mm-hmm. When you look at the Chinese and what they're doing in terms of the use of the data, I get it. They take pictures of people, and it's privacy issues. But at the same time, going back to your AI topic, artificial intelligence is entirely based on data. That is, when you say machine learning, it needs to learn from something.
Yeah.
They have unleashed the power of the data. So if you want to build a building, you need concrete, you need rod irons, you need those things. If you want to build an AI machine, you need data. Yeah. And the more we push back and we're trying to control our data, we're going to lose the race, because they're not just getting ahead a little. The more data they get, the faster their machines are learning. The faster their machines are learning. So there is a trade-off between what we can get and what we cannot achieve. And I think that we may at times push this idea of privacy a little too far. Now, security is a different thing. Security is, if you come, you hack my bank account and you're able to make money, then yes, there's a problem. Guess what? If I had more control over you without the privacy, then I can eliminate that.
Yeah.
The reason that you can do what you could do as a hacker is because you are hiding behind this curtain of privacy. Mm-hmm. So it could be the reverse argument. Again, I'm not against privacy. I'm just for balancing and not going in one direction or another direction too far.
Very interesting. Now, we talked about China a couple of times, and there's a lot of talk going about China, and I completely see how they are making these things a priority, like capturing data and advancements in all these cutting edge technologies. So, what do you think? I mean, you have a better perspective on things. Do you think that it's actually China becoming a superpower of tomorrow and taking over US and other richer countries? What are your
I
opinions about that?
my thinking is whenever you underestimate your opponent, you are doomed to lose. And I feel that we're underestimating in the United States the power of what is coming, what they're doing, how they're doing it, how much money they're spending on achieving it. They have 5-year plans as a part of it. They say we're moving from labor economy to the technology economy. What they're doing is building the robots that they would come to Switzerland, America, and Germany, and those would be the labor force that would be working in those companies alongside our labor. And all their labor is doing is building high-level, expensive machinery, and they've moved away from a labor economy. Now, in the opposite side, we're concerned about what do we do with the people in certain part of our country which are running out of jobs. And it is true, they are. It is a fact that, in some parts of Detroit and Middle America, they've had jobs and those jobs have been displaced. But as opposed to solving the problem, we're underestimating the opponent and kind of, dazzling ourselves with this illusion that we're great and forever we will remain great. I believe that's the same things that the Romans said when they, before they fell. So I've been saying this a lot. Hey, I'm not saying China is great and it's my new Mecca that I'm bowing to. I'm saying we gotta wake up. We gotta see what these guys are doing. And until the time that we entangle in our day-to-day conferences and convolutions and discussions about privacy or not privacy, do we have 7 jobs in here? Until the days that we're entangled with those things, those guys are making progress, and every day they're making more progress.
Yeah, exactly. And not even in technology, like this new Silk Road project that they are doing, which is the super highway across the continents. I mean, this kind of infrastructure is unheard of. And they are conceiving that not just for 5 years; it'll be for next 50, 100 years, right?
Absolutely. They're starting to control the ports across Europe. They're starting to do things in Africa. I mean, if you look at put the pieces together, sometimes what we're sold on the media about, selective sharing and not truly exposing what's going on is really, I think, misleading us. And this misleading is like misleading the CEO of a company or the employees of a company that we're great until we're broke.
Yeah.
We can accomplish. We have great minds. We have great capability in the United States, and as long as we're not bamboozled and underestimate the competition.
Great.
And I'm afraid we're doing a little bit of that.
Yeah. All right. Now, one of the other metaphors that you used is that of an ocean in your podcast and talks. So, can you comment on that? What is this ocean that you talk about?
Sure. So there is a few kind of ideas. I call them the 2Bs for an entrepreneur. One is that pilot idea that I was, the risk taker. They're pilots. They're navigators. Another one is this idea of an ocean. An entrepreneur cannot buy, sell, conceive, run all of the companies or all of the things he or she does by himself. That is, I'm not building a product to sell to myself. I need a customer. I need employees to help me. I need partners to provide me with the pieces of this thing. I need content. I need supply chain. I need all that sort of stuff. So unless you want to produce and sell your own products, you have to live in an ecosystem. So I use the ocean and I call it your oceanness as an analogy that says we need to operate as an entrepreneur in an ecosystem. Now you decide how big or small your oceanness is. That is, not everybody is has the vision or the ability to be the Bill Gates or the Microsoft of the world, where they have 17 million people operating in their ocean. We may have a donut shop, we may have a print shop, we may have whatever our scope is. That is the way. That's the place where we operate, and it is how are we a provider to the people within that ocean? How are we a provider, just like an ocean in that ecosystem provides? When are we both calm and at the same time we could be very scary when it's stormy? So our competition should be afraid of us, but at the same time we have to be calm, cool, and collected. There are certain characteristics of an ocean that is giving. It is fluid, it's flexible, because we need to be flexible as an entrepreneur. We can't say this is my plan and heck with the rest of the universe. Yeah. We have to be able to evolve our plan, change our plan, adopt our plan in order to stay relevant. So all of that defines this idea of oceanness. As you can see, I just like, I don't know, maybe it's my character. I love to talk in analogies because I think it communicates in a different way. And I believe every entrepreneur, for that matter, every person, is very unique and has a unique philosophy of operating and entrepreneurship. And the idea is not to have a how-to guide, do this, and do this, but to have the methodologies, the ideas to be spread in a way that you can then take them and make them your own. If you look at the Steve Jobs of the world, Bill Gates, Richard Branson, and go all the way to Henry Ford and others, they're all entrepreneurs. They're all very successful, but they're absolutely not the same. Each one of them is very unique. So good entrepreneurs have the ability to take ideas and see how it resonates with their own philosophy of operation and adopt those that make sense. And that's not a how-to. That's an internalization of a bunch of ideas that you put together and you create your own tapestry. And that's the uniqueness of each entrepreneur.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, the theme of the show is bootstrapping, and we work with entrepreneurs, and we preach bootstrapping is one way to go. In fact, in some cases, it's a better way to go. And obviously you have been a venture capitalist, so you will have a very good contrast between these two approaches. What are your thoughts about bootstrapping versus going with venture capital?
I have done both, as you mean, multiple times.
Yeah.
My first advice when I have companies come to me and say, you don't need me, and you shouldn't get me or anybody else who sells you. If you can own 100% of your company and you don't have a guy pushing you all around, because your agendas are different. The agenda of an investor is to an exit, because that's the only way he would get his money back. He's not interested in profit. He's not interested in your son taking over. He's not interested in a lot of other things. He is interested in pushing this from point zero to an exit, get out, cash out, however it is. And he loves you until you perform, and then he wouldn't love you anymore, regardless of how lovable you are. He's not married to your idea. He's married to the idea of an exit, of selling. So my suggestion always is, if you can do it without, do it without. And in a lot of cases, you actually can do it without. The question is, if you manage your appetite for money, if you can manage your greed. No, some things you can't. If you're trying to be an Uber and still lose $1 billion every quarter, that cannot be done by bootstrapping. But to me, that's a stupid business model anyways. We're going out to people, we're doing an IPO, getting some people's money, and then losing that money in order to have someday, some time in the future, and the economics of it is just not clear. So there are some businesses that you just cannot do those kind of things, and those are businesses that are usually designed for rapid growth, huge exits, because you're paying. That's how you get it. You get, as opposed to having a customer, finance your working capital, you're having a venture capitalist finance your working capital, because guess what? Your business model is not proven. You still can't do it, and it is not foreseeable future. So my advice is, do it in increments, build things that can sell now. That's how you actually get better products, because as people are consuming it, you would know that that works. If it doesn't work, you have not spent all of your life savings to do it. Now, you need two things for any business, regardless of the business. In order for you to go through, create a value chain of activities and create value for customers, employees, whoever you want, there has to be value created for that ecosystem. And it's not just customers. It's not just, I have the best product for my customer, but my employees are being paid 10 cents an hour. It doesn't work. So there has to be that value created for the partners who are letting you go, for the investors, for everybody in the game. So this definition of our fascination with customers, we need to expand that. The value has to be delivered to all parties within the ecosystem.
Yeah.
So my point is, in order for you to be able to make anything, content, digital, non-digital, products, whatever it is, you have to have all of that process, and you have to create value. You need two things. You need a strategy, an approach that makes you unique and differentiated, and you need money. You cannot start a business without money. Whatever you want to build, now, consider your time is money. If you were going out and doing something, now you may value your time as $15 an hour. Somebody else may value their time as $500 an hour. But whatever you value it, there is a value to it. There's money that needs to be done, needs to be available, and there's a strategy that needs. And both of them are equally important. Now, I have entrepreneurs come to me and say, well, Sid, we need to raise $5 million. Okay, what do you have? Well, we have an app. We've tested it. This is a true story, by the way. This happened like a few weeks ago. Okay. We are three individuals. One of us is an engineer at Google. The other one is a consultant in retail business. And okay, so what do you have? We have an app. Okay, has it been tested? No. I don't want to explain what the app was, but it wasn't that great of a value proposition. But we need $5 million. And I said, why do you need $5 million? He said, well, we have families. Okay. We want to quit our jobs. Well, the role of a venture capitalist is not to pay your family. He has his own family. Yeah. So this illusion that some has been created, that I go get somebody else, and then they come, they give me money, and I pay for my family, and it's a job. Then that's a job. Yeah. You're looking for a job. You're not looking to be an entrepreneur. You're not looking for building a company. Building a company has some consequences, which is you have to talk to your wife. You're under she or he. You have to talk to your husband. You have to be on the same page. There is pain along the way. It doesn't need to be hugely painful. You don't need to sell your house and all of that, but there is a pain. And that is a mutual pain. If you're not ready to do that, then I wouldn't suggest you jump into the lake, because it's dangerous. It's cold. You got to be able to swim. So my point is, I'm absolutely 100% for bootstrapping, 100%. But there are some businesses that requires significant money to run. But even if you're bootstrapping, that means you have to put some money out. Yeah. But it actually forces you. What bootstrapping does, it forces you to be able to get to value faster.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you have the pressure behind you, and you gotta get something that is valuable to somebody to buy.
Of course. Yeah. Exactly.
So that actually expedites the process in a way of getting to value for customers.
I completely agree, and that's exactly why I started this journey, and I'm preaching this method, because I've seen how traditional businesses have been built by bootstrapping. What are the benefits? And I've also seen the startups who raise money too early and what happens to them. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that. And
my pleasure. Now, it was enjoyable to be with you.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said it's been enjoyable to be and talk with you.
Awesome. This has been a very enlightening conversation. Thank you so much. Now, before I let you go, can you tell us how people can reach out to you and connect with you?
Sure. My email is the easiest, which is sid@mohassed.com. My first name at my last name. And if they type in mohassed.com, which is again my last name, there's a whole host of things there. It's my background and what I do, my speaking engagement stuff, and it talks about my activities, all the time. What I'm doing, for example, I'm doing a talk tomorrow as a keynote speaker for DataCon, which is a big event, a couple of thousand people in LA. But I do a lot of speaking engagements, different places, and I would love to have folks join me, reach out to me, and tell me that they heard me on your program.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. Pleasure to be with you, and I wish you the best and all best with all the bootstrappers.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's all for now. Until next time. And if you're an existing or an aspiring tech entrepreneur, then I invite you to check out my new online workshop, Bootstrapping Your Tech Startup Dreams. Go to bootstraptechstartup.com and sign up for free. I want to make sure that more successful and sound decisions are made every day in your tech projects. Let's start finding solutions to your problems. So go to bootstraptechstartup.com and I look forward to helping you with your tech projects. If you want more engaging videos and insightful interviews with industry's thought leaders, then check out other videos we have picked for you. The link is right there. And if you want to be notified about our new content, please do consider subscribing to our channel.